The Great Hall of Galactic Council Station Omega-7 stretched out like a massive dome under the stars. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their assigned seats, their different shapes and colors making the place look like a living rainbow. The air hummed with translation devices working in hundreds of languages. Admiral Hyun-Woo Kim stood at the human section, his dark blue uniform clean and pressed. His face showed the marks of many battles. A scar across his left cheek, gray hair at his temples, and eyes that had seen too much war. He watched the other delegates with careful attention. Next to him sat Ambassador So-Jin Park. She was smaller than the Admiral, but her presence filled the space around her. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her dark suit made her look like she meant business. In her hands, she held a data pad with notes she had written many times before. The meeting today was about shipping routes through the Tau Ceti system. It should have been simple. Most species wanted to use the fastest paths to move their goods. But Chancellor Vexatai of the Kethmaran Empire had other ideas. Vexatai stood up from his seat across the hall. He was tall, maybe 8 feet, with green scales that shined under the lights. His yellow eyes looked at the human section with something like anger. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. "I do not understand why my ships must change course for human vessels," Vexatai said. His words echoed through the hall. "Our technology is better. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are stronger. Why do we follow this old rule?" Many of the younger delegates nodded. They had not been alive when the rule was made. To them, humans looked weak. Earth's ships were smaller than most. Their weapons seemed simple. Their armor looked thin. An old creature called Dalvin spoke up from the Traxian section. His skin was purple and wrinkled like old leather. "The rule exists for good reason, Chancellor. Perhaps you should remember why." Vexatai laughed. The sound was not pleasant. "Old stories," he said. "Tales told to scare children. We live in modern times now." Ambassador Park stood up slowly. Every eye in the hall turned to her. She was one of the smallest beings there, but when she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner. "The Galactic Accords. Section 1. Subsection Alpha," she began. Her voice was calm and clear. "No military force shall interfere with, board, or detain vessels flying under Earth's flag without direct provocation of an attack upon their own ships." "Yes, yes," Vextai waved a clawed hand. "I know the words, but why should superior beings follow rules made for inferior ones?" The hall became very quiet. Some of the older delegates shifted in their seats. They remembered things the younger ones did not. Admiral Kim stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. "Because 300 years ago, someone else called us inferior too. The Veltar Empire," said Dalvin quietly. "They thought much like you do now, Chancellor." Vextai's scales changed color slightly, becoming darker. "The Veltar were weak. That is why they lost." "The Veltar controlled 47 star systems," Park said. "They had a population of 12 billion. Their technology was beyond anything humans had seen. They had weapons that could crack planets." "Then how did primitive humans defeat them?" asked a young delegate from the Rishan Collective. Park looked at Admiral Kim. He nodded slightly. "They didn't just defeat them," Park said slowly. "They removed them from existence. Completely. Every ship, every station, every world. The Veltar Empire died in 5 years. The hall was silent now. The only sound was the hum of air systems. "That is impossible," Vexatai said, but his voice was not as strong as before. "The records are open to all," Admiral Kim said. "You can read them anytime you wish. But I will tell you what they say." He paused, looking around the hall. "The Veltar attacked human colonies. They killed millions of people. They thought humans were too weak to fight back properly. And?" Vexatai demanded. "They were wrong," Kim said simply. "Humans do not fight wars to win. They fight wars to make sure their enemies never threaten anyone again. Ever." A feline delegate from the Moran Federation spoke up. "But surely the humans could not have destroyed an entire empire alone." "They did not do it alone," Dalvin said. His old voice was full of sadness. "Other species helped. Some because they wanted to. Others because they were afraid not to." Park touched her data pad. The air above the center of the hall lit up with a star map. It showed the galaxy as it was 300 years ago. Veltar territory was marked in red. It covered a huge area of space. This was the Veltar Empire in 2087, Park said. 47 systems, 12 billion people, the strongest military force in the galaxy. The map changed. Now it showed the galaxy 5 years later. Where the red had been, there was nothing but empty space. This was Veltar space in 2092, Park continued. No ships, no stations, no colonies, no people, nothing. The silence in the hall was thick enough to touch. How? Asked the Rishan delegate in a whisper. Admiral Kim's face was like stone. Humans learned that the Veltar had planned to wipe out all human colonies, every man, woman, and child. So humans decided to return the favor. It was not just killing, Dalvin added. It was careful, complete removal. Humans made sure that not one Veltar would live to threaten anyone again. They sterilized planets. They destroyed space stations. They hunted down every ship that tried to escape. But, Vextai said, his voice shaking slightly, that would be genocide. Yes, Park said quietly. It was, and every human ship captain knew it. Every human soldier understood what they were doing, and they did it anyway. The hall erupted in confused voices. Some delegates demanded to know why such a terrible thing was allowed. Others asked how humans could do such a thing. Admiral Kim raised his hand and the noise stopped. Do you want to know the worst part? He asked. His voice was very quiet now. Every human involved in that war hated what they had to do. They knew they were becoming monsters, but they did it because they believed it was the only way to protect innocent people from ever facing the same threat again. Park nodded. After the war, Earth's government put itself on trial. They asked the galaxy to judge them for what they had done. What happened? Asked the feline delegate. The galaxy was too afraid to judge them, Dalvin said. Instead, they made the accords. They decided it was better to give humans anything they wanted than to risk making them angry again. Vexatai sat down heavily. His scales had turned almost black now. But surely humans have changed since then. Admiral Kim smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Chancellor, my ship carries enough firepower to destroy your home world. So does every other Earth vessel in space. We have spent 300 years building weapons and hoping we never have to use them. The rule exists, Park said, because humans are exactly as dangerous as they were 300 years ago. The only difference is that now they choose to be peaceful. The hall was quiet for a long time. Finally, Vextai spoke again. His voice was much smaller than before. I understand the rule now, he said, but surely there is no harm in checking human cargo ships, just to be sure they follow galactic law? Admiral Kim and Ambassador Park looked at each other. Something passed between them that made both their faces turn serious. Chancellor, Park said carefully, I hope you never have reason to test that assumption. The meeting ended shortly after. As delegates filed out, many of them were reading the old war records on their personal devices. The younger ones looked shocked. The older ones just looked sad. Vextai left with his advisors, but his mind was already planning. He was sure the old stories were exaggerated. Humans were small and weak-looking. How dangerous could they really be? Admiral Kim watched him go and felt a cold feeling in his chest. He had seen that look before, on other faces, in other times. It was the look of someone who thought they knew better than history. He hoped he was wrong. 3 weeks after the council meeting, Captain Junho Lee stood on the bridge of his ship, the Inchun's Pride. It was not a big ship compared to some in the galaxy, but it was his ship, and he was proud of it. The bridge was clean and simple, with screens showing the space around them. Captain, called Lieutenant Minseo Choi from her weapons station. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and quick eyes. 3 cargo ships coming out of hyperspace. They're ours. Lee nodded. Send them our escort codes. Tell them to stay close. The 3 cargo ships were big and slow, carrying food and medicine to human colonies in the outer systems. Lee's job was to make sure they got there safely. It was usually boring work, but today felt different. Sir, called the communications. Officer, the cargo ships are sending their cargo lists. All legal goods, all properly documented. Good, Lee said. He was a calm man, about 40 years old, with the patient face of someone who had spent years in space. Set course for the Tau Ceti jump point. Nice and easy. The small fleet moved through space at a comfortable speed. The cargo ship stayed, in formation behind the Incheon's Pride, their hulls full of supplies that people needed. Lee had done this run many times. It should have been simple. "Captain," Minseo called out suddenly, "contacts on long-range sensors. 12 ships, moving fast." Lee felt his stomach tighten. "Identification?" "Kethmaran Empire flags," she reported. "Military vessels. 1 heavy cruiser, 6 destroyers, 5 corvettes." Lee's hands gripped the arms of his command chair. "Signal the cargo ships. Tell them to stay calm and follow our lead." On the main screen, dots of light appeared as the Kethmoran ships came closer. They were bigger than human ships with green hulls that looked like the scales of their builders. Their weapons were clearly visible, pointed forward like threats. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Lee said. The screen flickered and showed a Kethmaran bridge. Chancellor Vextai himself stood in the center, his yellow eyes fixed on Lee. Behind him, other Kethmaran officers worked at their stations. "Human vessel," Vextai said, his voice echoing strangely through the translation system. "You will stop immediately and prepare to be boarded." Lee kept his face calm. "Chancellor, this is Captain Lee of the Earth vessel Incheon's Pride. We are in open space conducting legal escort duties. By what authority do you order us to stop?" Vextai's scales shifted color slightly. "By the authority of the Kethmaran Empire. We have reason to believe your cargo ships carry illegal weapons." "I see," Lee said slowly. "Do you have any evidence of this?" "We do not need evidence to inspect suspicious vessels," Vextai replied. "Our sensors detect unusual energy readings from your ships." Lee knew this was not true. The cargo ships carried food and medicine, nothing more. But he also knew that Vextai was looking for an excuse to test human resolve. "Chancellor," Lee said carefully, "I respectfully request that you check the Galactic Accords, Section 1, Subsection Alpha. Earth vessels may not be interfered with without direct provocation." Vextai laughed. The sound was cold and harsh. "Old rules made by fearful people. Times have changed, human." Behind Vextai, Lee could see a Kethmaran officer who looked worried. This was Sub-Commander Rathkol, Vextai's tactical officer. He had read the old records and knew what humans had done before. "Sir," Rathkol said quietly, "perhaps we should contact the Council before—" "Silence," Vextai snapped. He turned, back to Lee. "You have 2 minutes to shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, we will disable your ships." Lee looked around his bridge. His crew was young but well-trained. Minseo had her hands ready at the weapons controls. The other officers waited for his orders. "Chancellor," Lee said, "I cannot allow you to board our ships. We are carrying humanitarian supplies to human colonies. We have done nothing wrong." "Your time is up," Vextai said. "Disable their engines." The transmission cut off. Lee turned to his crew. "All hands to battle stations," he said calmly. "Send a priority message to Earth Defense Command. Coordinates, time, and the code phrase, Rule 1 violated." Minseo's fingers flew over her controls. "Message sent, sir. All weapons ready." "Sir," called the sensor officer, "they're targeting our engines with tractor beams." Lee nodded. He had known this would happen. One small human ship could not fight 12 Kethmaran vessels. But that was not the point. "Do not fire unless they fire first," he ordered. "But be ready." The tractor beams hit the Incheon's Pride, and the ship shuddered. Lee felt the engines fighting against the invisible hands that held them. "They're pulling us in," reported the helm officer. "Let them," Lee said, "but keep recording everything." On the cargo ships, Sergeant Dong-Hyun Han prepared his small team of Marines for boarding. They had only light weapons, enough to protect against pirates, but not enough to fight a real military force. "Boys," Han said to his team, "looks like we're about to become very famous. Try to stay alive long enough to tell the story." The Kethmaran ships surrounded the human vessels like wolves around sheep. Their weapons were charged and ready. Boarding shuttles launched from the destroyers, carrying Kethmoran soldiers. On the Inchin's Pride, sparks flew from control panels as the tractor beams strained the ship's systems. "Hull breach in cargo bay 2, someone called out. "They're cutting through." Lee stood up from his command chair. "All crew, this is the captain. Offer no resistance to boarding parties. That is an order. We are not here to fight today." Minseo looked at him with confusion. "Sir, we can't just let them—" "Lieutenant," Lee said quietly, "our job right now is not to win. Our job is to send a message." The first Kethmaran soldiers entered the Incheon's Pride through the cargo bay. They were big creatures, almost 7 feet tall, with weapons that hummed with energy. The human crew did not fight them. On Vex Tai's ship, Rathcole watched the boarding operation with growing worry. "Sir," he said, "the humans are not resisting at all. This seems too easy," Vexatai laughed. "Because they know they are beaten. Humans are not as dangerous as the old stories claim." "But, sir, they sent a message before we disabled their communications. A coded message." Vexatai waved a clawed hand. "Let them send messages. Who will help them out here?" Rathcole looked at his sensor displays. Space around them seemed empty except for their own ships and the human vessels. But something felt wrong. On the cargo ships, Kethmaran soldiers searched through crates of food and medical supplies. They found exactly what the manifests said they would find. No weapons, no illegal technology, just supplies for human colonies. "Chancellor," reported the boarding team leader, "all cargo ships contain only humanitarian supplies. No weapons detected." Vextai's scales darkened with anger. "Search again. Search everything." While the soldiers searched, Captain Lee sat in his damaged command center. His ship was disabled, his crew was under guard, and the Kethmaran had found nothing illegal. But he was not worried. "Sir," Minseo whispered, "how long until—" 72 hours, Lee said quietly. "Maybe less." She looked confused. "Until what?" Lee smiled sadly. "Until Chancellor Vexatai learns why the Galactic Accords exist." Far away, on Earth's Luna base, Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood in front of a huge wall display showing the galaxy. A red light blinked in the Tau Ceti system. "Sir," called a young officer. "Priority message from Captain Lee. Code phrase, Rule 1 violated." Admiral Kim closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were very tired. "Send the activation codes," he said quietly. "All of them." "Sir." Protocol. 7 is now active, Kim said. "Wake up the fleet." Around Earth and Luna, in hidden bases throughout the solar system, lights began to turn on in places that had been dark for decades. Ships that had been sleeping began to power up their engines. Weapons that had not been fired in 100 years started their charging cycles. In the Tau Ceti system, Chancellor Vexatai stood on his bridge, watching his soldiers search the human ships. He felt proud of himself. He had shown that humans were not as powerful as they pretended to be. He had no idea that he had just started something that would change the galaxy forever. "Sir," Rathcole said again, "I really think we should contact the Council." "After we finish here," Vextai said. "Let them see that the Kethmaran Empire does not bow to human threats." Space around them remained quiet and empty, but not for long. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood in the command center of Luna Base, staring at the red light that marked where Captain Lee's ship was being held. Around him, officers moved quickly between control stations. The quiet hum of computers filled the air. "Sir," called Commander Young-Jin Park, the base communications officer. "All fleet commanders are responding to the activation codes. They're asking for confirmation." Kim's hand moved to a small panel on his command chair. Under a clear cover was a single red button. He had hoped never to touch it. "Confirm Protocol 7, he said. "Full activation." "Sir," Park said quietly, "are you sure? Once we start this—" "I know what happens once we start this," Kim said. His voice was tired, but firm. "Send the codes." Across the solar system, things that had been sleeping for generations began to wake up. On the dark side of the moon, huge doors opened in what tourists thought were old mining tunnels. Inside, ships began to move for the first time in decades. Near Jupiter, a space station that was supposed to be a research facility, suddenly lit up with military signals. its solar panels folded back to reveal weapon systems that could crack asteroids. On Mars, in the deep canyon called Valles Marineris, elevator platforms started rising from the planet's core. They carried ships that had been built in secret, ships that most humans didn't even know existed. Kim watched it all happen on his screens. Each activation made him feel older. "Sir," asked a young lieutenant, "how many ships are we waking up?" "All of them," Kim said simply. The lieutenant looked confused. "But sir, our public records show Earth has maybe 50 military vessels." Kim almost smiled. "Lieutenant, our public records show a lot of things that aren't exactly true." A new voice spoke from behind them. "The public records show what we want them to show." Everyone turned to see General Mi-Young Kang walking into the command center. She was old, maybe 70, with gray hair and lines around her eyes. But she moved like a soldier, straight and strong. "General," Kim said with surprise, "I thought you were retired." "I was," Kang said, "until the alarm woke me up an hour ago." She looked at the main display. "Protocol 7. I haven't seen that in 30 years. "It's been longer than that since anyone actually used it," Kim said. Kang nodded. "The last time was the Rigel incident, but that was just a show of force, no shots fired." She paused. "This time feels different. This time someone actually broke Rule 1, Kim said. "They're holding our ships, boarding them, searching them." "Fools," Kang said quietly. "Don't they know why the rule exists?" Kim looked at her. "You were there, weren't you? During the Veltar War." "I was young then," Kang said. "Just a lieutenant. On Admiral Tae-Young Seo's staff. Lee's grandfather." She walked to the main display and touched the red light marking Tau Ceti. "I watched it all happen." The command center became quiet except for the soft sounds of computers. Everyone wanted to hear what she would say. "Tell them," Kim said. "Tell them what we did." Kang was quiet for a moment. Then she began to speak. "The Veltar Empire was the strongest force in the galaxy 300 years ago. They had technology we could barely understand. Their ships were twice as big as ours. Their weapons could destroy planets. They controlled 47 star systems and had 12 billion people." She paused, looking at the faces around her. "They thought humans were weak because our ships were small and our colonies were few. So they decided to remove us from the galaxy completely. Not just defeat us, remove us. Every man, woman, and child." A young ensign raised her hand. "But General, how could we fight something that powerful?" Kang smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We didn't fight them, Ensign. We erased them." The room was very quiet now. The Veltar made one mistake. Kang continued. "They thought humans fight like other species. They thought we would try to win territory or protect our important worlds, or negotiate for peace." "What did we do instead?" asked the ensign. "We decided that any species that would kill human children didn't deserve to exist," Kang said. "So we made sure they stopped existing." Kim activated a holographic display above the main table. It showed the galaxy as it was 300 years ago. "This was Veltar space in 2087, he said. Red areas covered a huge section of the star map. 47 systems, hundreds of worlds, billions of people. The display changed to show 5 years later. Where the red had been, there was nothing. "This was Veltar space in 2092, Kim said. "Empty, all of it." "How?" whispered the ensign. Kang's face became very serious. "We built ships designed for one purpose only, to make sure the Veltar could never threaten anyone again. Ever. But that would be genocide," said Commander Park. "Yes," Kang said simply. "It was, and every human who took part in it knew exactly what they were doing." She activated another display. This one showed ship designs, human vessels that looked nothing like the small, simple ships other species knew about. "We didn't just build warships," Kang said. "We built planet killers. We built ships that could sterilize entire solar systems. We built weapons that could crack worlds in half." The room stared at the display in shock. "And we used them?" asked the lieutenant. "We used all of them," Kim said. "The war lasted 5 years. When it was over, there was no Veltar Empire, no Veltar planets, no Veltar people. Nothing but empty. Space and the memory of what they had tried to do." "But surely," said the ensign, "surely we felt bad about it." Kang laughed, but the sound was bitter. "Feel bad? Child, we felt terrible. We knew we were becoming monsters, but we did it anyway. Why? Because, Kim said, we decided it was better to be monsters than to let innocent people face what the Veldtar had planned for us. Kang nodded. Every ship captain who fired planet-killing weapons knew they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Every soldier who walked on dead worlds knew they were part of something horrible. But they did it because they believed it was the only way to make sure no one else would ever have to suffer what the Veldtar wanted to do to us. The command center was silent for a long time. What happened after the war? Asked Commander Park. Earth put itself on trial, Kim said. Our government asked the galaxy to judge us for what we had done. And? The galaxy was too scared to judge us, Kang said. Instead, they wrote the Galactic Accords. They decided it was safer to give humans whatever we wanted than to risk making us angry again. But we're peaceful now, said the ensign. We've been peaceful for 300 years. Yes, Kim said. We are peaceful by choice, but we never stopped building the ships. He touched his control panel and new displays lit up around the room. They showed hidden shipyards, secret weapon factories, and fleets of vessels that had been sleeping in the dark for decades. Every human ship in space carries enough firepower to destroy a planet, Kim said. Every human colony has weapons hidden beneath it that could crack moons. We have spent 300 years building the most powerful military force in galactic history. Why? Asked the lieutenant. Because, Kang said, we never want to have to use it again. The stronger we are, the less likely anyone is to test us. Kim looked at the red light marking Tau Ceti system. But someone just did test us. Chancellor Vexetai, Kang said, reading the reports. Young and stupid. He thinks the old stories are just myths. What do we do now? Asked Commander Park. Kim was quiet for a moment. Then he began giving orders. Signal all fleet commanders. Tell them to prepare for full deployment. Battle formation Omega-7. Sir, Park said with shock. Omega-7 is designed to fight entire empires. Yes, Kim said. It is. But sir, Chancellor Vextai only has 12 ships. Commander, Kang said quietly. This isn't about 12 ships. This is about making sure the galaxy remembers why Rule 1 exists. Around them, the displays showed ship after ship powering up across the solar system. Weapons that could destroy planets were being prepared. Ships that could fight fleets were moving out of their hiding places. How long until we're ready? Kim asked. 60 hours for full deployment, reported a tactical officer. Kim nodded. Signal Captain Lee. Tell him to hold on. Help is coming. In the Tau Ceti system, Captain Lee sat in his damaged command center watching Kethmoran soldiers search his ship. He didn't look worried. Sir, Mincio whispered, the Kethmoran are asking a lot of questions about our cargo. They seem confused that we're really just carrying food and medicine. Lee smiled slightly. They'll be a lot more confused in a couple of days. Why? Because, Lee said, they're about to learn that attacking human ships isn't about the ships themselves. It's about what happens when you make humans angry. Far away, hidden fleets began moving through space toward the Tau Ceti system. Chancellor Vexetai had started something he didn't understand. Soon he would learn exactly what 300 years of human military preparation looked like. Captain Haewon Yoon had been sleeping when the alarm woke her. For 30 years, she had lived quietly on Luna, teaching history at the military academy. Her students thought she was just another retired officer with interesting stories about the old days. They were wrong. Now she stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance, a ship that officially did not exist. Around her, a crew that had been scattered across the solar system for decades took their stations with practiced ease. Status report, she ordered. All systems online, Captain, reported Commander Jinwoo Han at the engineering station. He was younger than Yoon, but his hands moved over the controls like he had been born to them. Reactor at full power. Weapons. Charged and ready. Navigation. Course plotted for Tau Ceti system, called Lieutenant Sujin Kim from the helm. Jump drive spooled and ready. Yoon looked at the main screen. It showed space around Luna, but now that space was filled with ships, dozens of them. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid bases, underground facilities, and fake mining stations. Communications, signal Admiral Jang on the Busan Rising. Tell her Dreadnought Group 7 is ready for deployment." "Aye, Captain," Yoon had commanded. The Soul's vengeance for 15 years before it was officially retired. But retired didn't mean destroyed. It meant hidden, waiting. The ship was enormous, bigger than most space stations. Its hull was black metal that seemed to drink in the light around it. Along its sides, weapon ports waited behind armored covers. Inside its belly, fighter squadrons sat ready to launch. "Captain," called the communications officer, "Admiral Jang is asking if our special cargo is secure." Yoon's face became serious. "Tell her yes. Dr. Sunho Bay confirms all packages are ready for delivery." In the ship's secure section, Dr. Bay worked at a control panel surrounded by warning signs. He was old now, maybe 65, with white hair and glasses. But his hands were steady as he made final preparations on weapons that he had hoped never to use. The weapons had no official names. The military called them planet crackers in quiet moments. Each one could split a world in half. The Soul's vengeance carried 12 of them. Dr. Bay called his assistant, a young woman named Lieutenant Yejin Park. All packages show green. Status: ready for deployment. Bay nodded sadly. 30 years I've been maintaining these things, hoping they would never leave their storage racks. And now? Now someone has forced our hand, Bay said. Again. Across the solar system, other ships were powering up. Near Mars, Admiral Kyungmi Jang stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Busan Rising. It was smaller than Yoon's dreadnought, but faster, designed to lead battle groups into combat. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer. "All groups report. Ready? Dreadnought groups, destroyer squadrons, fighter wings, support vessels. Total count: 437 ships." Jang closed her eyes for a moment. When Earth's public fleet numbered only 50 ships, the idea of 400 hidden vessels seemed impossible. But humans had learned to be very good at hiding things. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Formation Omega-7, destination, Tau Ceti system." Around her, officers began the complex dance of organizing a fleet for war. But this wasn't just any fleet. This was humanity's true military power, kept hidden for 300 years. "Admiral," asked her communications officer, "should we signal the Galactic Council? Let them know we're deploying?" "No," Jang said. "Let them find out when we arrive." The first ships began to jump to hyperspace. They moved in small groups to avoid detection, taking different routes to the same destination. To any watching sensors, it would look like normal traffic spreading across the galaxy. But they were all heading to the same place. On Luna Base, Admiral Kim watched the deployment with mixed feelings. He was proud of how smoothly everything worked. 30 years of practice drills had paid off, but he was sad that it was necessary. "Sir," called Commander Park, "the Kethmaran Empire has sent a message to the Galactic Council. They're claiming they found illegal weapons on human cargo ships." Kim almost laughed. "Have they now? What weapons?" "That's the interesting part. Sir, they haven't actually found any weapons. They're just claiming they exist." "I see." Kim turned to General Kang, who was watching the deployment displays. "It seems Chancellor Vextai is doubling down on his mistake." "Fools often do," Kang said. "The smart ones realize their error and try to back down quietly. The stupid ones keep digging deeper holes. And which type is Vextai? We're about to find out." In the Tau Ceti system, Chancellor Vextai was indeed digging his hole deeper. For 2 days, his soldiers had been searching the human ships. They had found nothing illegal, but Vextai refused to admit he was wrong. "Search again," he ordered. "Humans are clever. They must be hiding something." Subcommander Rathkole looked at his sensor displays with growing worry. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting unusual traffic in nearby systems. Ships moving toward us." "What kind of ships?" "Unknown, sir. The energy signatures are strange." Vextai laughed. "Probably trade vessels coming to see what's happening. Let them come." But Rathkole wasn't so sure. The energy readings looked like nothing he had seen before. The ships were big, much bigger than normal cargo vessels, and they were all coming from the direction of Earth. On the human cargo ship Seoul, Dreams, Sergeant Dong Hyun Han sat with his hands tied, watching Kethmaran soldiers tear apart crates of medical supplies. The aliens were getting frustrated because they kept finding exactly what the manifests said they would find. "Sergeant," whispered one of his Marines. "How long do we wait?" Han looked at his watch. It was a special watch, one that counted down to a specific time. "About 18 hours, he said quietly. "Until what?" Han smiled grimly. "Until Chancellor Vextai learns why smart people don't mess with human ships." In hyperspace, the human fleet moved like a school of deadly fish through the dark. Ships that had been sleeping for decades now raced toward battle with crews that had drilled for this moment their entire lives. Captain Yoon stood on her bridge, watching the countdown timer that marked their arrival time. Around her, the Soul's Vengeance hummed with power. Its weapons were ready. Its fighters were prepared to launch. Its planet-killing cargo waited in the secure bay. "Captain," called the communications officer. "Message from Admiral Jang. She wants to know if you have any last-minute changes to the battle plan." Yoon thought for a moment. The plan was simple. Arrive in overwhelming force, demand the release of the human ships, and demonstrate very clearly why Rule 1 existed. "Tell the Admiral no changes," Yoon said. "We stick to the original plan. And if they refuse to surrender?" Yoon's face was like stone. "Then we remind the galaxy what happens to people who threaten human lives." Near Jupiter, the last of the hidden ships cleared their concealment. What had looked like mining stations and research facilities revealed themselves as military bases. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden hangars. Supply ships loaded with enough ammunition to fight a war moved out of their hiding places. Earth's true military power was fully awake for the first time in 50 years. "Sir," reported a tactical officer on Luna Base. "All units report ready. The fleet is 36 hours from Tau Ceti." Admiral Kim nodded. "Signal Captain Lee. Tell him to prepare his crew for rescue operations." "And Chancellor Vextai?" Kim's eyes were cold. "Chancellor Vextai is about to receive a very important lesson in galactic history." In the Tau Ceti system, Captain Lee sat in his damaged command center, still calm despite 2 days of captivity. His ship was disabled, his crew was under guard, and the Kethmaran soldiers were getting more aggressive as they failed to find anything illegal. But Lee wasn't worried. He knew what was coming. "Sir," Mincio whispered during a moment when their guards weren't listening. "Are you sure help is coming?" Lee looked at his watch. It was the same type Han carried, counting down to the same moment. "Lieutenant," he said, quietly, "in about 30 hours, Chancellor Vextai is going to understand exactly why humans have been peaceful for 300 years. "What do you mean?" Lee smiled slightly. "We're peaceful because we choose to be. But when someone forces us to be otherwise..." He paused. "Well, the galaxy is about to remember what humans look like when they're not choosing to be peaceful." Above them, space seemed empty and quiet. But in hyperspace, just beyond detection, 437 ships moved through the dark like the shadow of death itself. Chancellor Vextai had wanted to test human resolve. Soon he would get his answer. Space around the Tau Ceti system had been empty for 3 days. Chancellor Vextai stood on his bridge, watching his soldiers search the human ships for the 3rd time. They had found nothing but food and medicine, but he refused to admit his mistake. "Sir," Subcommander Rathkole called out, his voice tight with worry. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching our position." Vextai barely looked up from his tactical display. "More trading ships, probably. Everyone wants to see what the great Kethmoran Empire is doing. Sir, these contacts are moving in formation. Military formation." Now Vextai paid attention. "How many ships?" Rathkole checked his sensors twice before answering. 437 vessels, sir, all showing military energy signatures." The bridge became very quiet. Vextai's scales shifted from green to a darker color. "That's impossible," he said. "No one has that many ships in one fleet." "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "the lead ships are dropping out of hyperspace." On the main screen, dots of light began appearing in space around them, but these weren't the small dots of normal ships. These were big, bright signatures that hurt to look at directly. The first ship to appear was enormous. It was black as space itself, with weapon ports along its hull that glowed with contained energy. Behind it came more ships, each one bigger than anything in Vextai's fleet. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer, his voice shaking. "Put it through." Vextai ordered, but his voice wasn't as strong as before. The screen flickered and showed a human bridge. A woman, in a dark blue uniform, stood in the center. Her face was calm, but her eyes were like ice. This was Admiral Kyung-mi Jung. "I am Admiral Jung of the Earth Defense Force," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of worlds. "You are holding human vessels and human crew members. You have 60 minutes to release them and withdraw from this system." Vextai tried to look confident, but his scales kept changing color. "By what authority do you make demands of the Kethmoran Empire?" "By the authority of 300 years of galactic peace that you just ended," Jang replied. Around Vextai's flagship, more human ships continued to appear. They formed a perfect sphere around the Kethmoran fleet, each ship's weapons pointed inward. The energy readings from the human vessels were beyond anything the Kethmoran sensors had ever recorded. "Admiral," Vextai said, trying to sound strong, "you are outnumbered. My fleet has 12 ships. Jang smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Chancellor, you have 12 ships. I have 437. But that's not why you should be worried." "Then why should I be worried?" "Because each of my ships carries enough firepower to destroy your homeworld." The bridge around Vextai erupted in nervous chatter. His officers looked at their sensor readings with growing fear. "Impossible," Vextai said. "Human ships are small and weak." "The ships you've seen are small and weak," Jang corrected. "These are different ships." As if to prove her point, one of the massive human vessels, the Soul's Vengeance, powered up its main weapons. Energy readings spiked so high that the Kethmoran sensors nearly overloaded. Captain Hae-Won Yoon stood on her bridge, watching the target locks appear on her tactical display. Each lock represented a Kethmoran ship that could be destroyed in seconds. "Captain," reported her weapons officer, "all planet crackers are armed and ready. Target locks confirmed on all enemy vessels. Hold fire," Yoon ordered. "Let's see if they're smart enough to surrender." On another human ship, Commander Young-Soo Kim prepared his fighter squadron for launch. He was Admiral Kim's son, and he had grown up hearing stories about the HFY War. Now he might get to see history repeat itself. "All pilots, this is Command Leader Kim," he spoke into his radio. "Remember, we're here to rescue our people, not to start a war. But if they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget," his wingman replied. Back on the Kethmoran flagship, Rathkol stared at his sensor displays in horror. "Sir, the energy signatures from those ships, each one reads like a mobile weapons platform." "You're exaggerating," Vextai said, but his voice shook. "No, sir, I'm not." Rathkol turned to face his commander. "Sir, I've been reading the old war records. The humans did exactly this to the Veltar Empire. The Veltar were weak. The Veltar controlled 47 star systems," Rathkol shouted. "They had technology beyond anything we have, and the humans destroyed them completely." Vextai looked around his bridge. His officers were all staring at the sensor displays, fear clear on their faces. Outside, the human fleet waited in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready. On the captured human cargo ship, Captain Lee felt the ship shake as weapons powered up nearby. He looked at his watch. 5 minutes until the deadline. "Sir," Min Seo whispered. "Do you think they'll surrender?" "I hope so," Lee said quietly. "For their sake." Admiral Jang's voice came over the communications again. "Chancellor Vextai, you now have 55 minutes to comply. I will not give you another warning." Vextai looked at his tactical officer. "What are our chances if we fight?" The officer looked at his displays for a long moment. "Sir, their smallest ship has more firepower than our entire fleet combined. Our chances are 0. "That can't be right." "Sir," Rathkol said urgently, "please look at the historical records. Look at what happened to every species that tried to fight humans. The Veltar, the Corvin hegemony, the Trask Republic. All gone. All completely destroyed." Vexatai's scales had turned almost black now. He was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake, but his pride would not let him back down. "Prepare for battle," he ordered. The bridge erupted in protests from his officers, but Vextai ignored them. "Charge all weapons. Target the nearest human ship." "Sir, please," Rathkol began. "Do it." Reluctantly, the Kethmoran ships powered. up their weapons and took aim at the human fleet. On the Busan Rising, Admiral Jang watched the enemy weapons come online with sadness rather than anger. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the Kethmoran vessels are charging weapons." "I see that." Jang closed her eyes for a moment. "Signal all ships. Execute Battle Plan Omega." Across the human fleet, weapons that had been sleeping for decades suddenly came alive. The space around Tau Ceti lit up with energy as 437 human warships prepared to demonstrate exactly why Rule 1 existed. "Fire," Vextai ordered. 12 Kethmoran ships opened fire at once. Their weapons were powerful, designed to crack asteroids and destroy space stations. The energy beams reached out toward the human fleet like fingers of death. The human ships didn't even bother to dodge. The Kethmoran weapons hit the human shields and simply disappeared. The energy that should have destroyed ships was absorbed, like drops of water hitting an ocean. "Impossible," Vextai whispered. Admiral Jang's voice came over the communications one last time. "You fired first, Chancellor. Now you get to see what humans look like when we're not being peaceful." The human fleet opened fire. It wasn't really a battle. Battles require two sides that can hurt each other. This was an execution. Human weapons reached out and touched the Kethmoran ships with surgical precision. Not to destroy them, that would have been easy. Instead, they carefully disabled each vessel's engines, weapons, and life support systems. The entire engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, 12 Kethmoran ships floated dead in space. Their crews were alive but helpless. Their weapons were melted scrap. Their engines were burned-out husks, and Chancellor Vextai finally understood why Rule 1 existed. "Sir," Rathcole said quietly, "they're sending rescue shuttles to our ships." "Rescue? Shuttles?" "Yes, sir. They're not going to let us die. They're just making sure we can never threaten anyone again." Admiral Jang's voice came over the communications once more. "Chancellor, your crews will be taken to the nearest Galactic Council station. Your ships will be towed there as well, though. I doubt they'll ever fly again." "Why?" Vextai asked. "Why didn't you just kill us?" "Because we're not monsters, Chancellor. We just do monstrous things when people force us to." Human rescue teams boarded the disabled Kethmoran ships. They were professional and efficient, treating wounded crew members and making sure life support systems were stable. Captain Yoon-ji Lee, Junho's sister, led the rescue team that freed the human prisoners. She found her brother on the bridge of his damaged ship, still calm despite 3 days of captivity. "About time you got here," he said with a smile. "Sorry we're late," she replied. "Traffic was terrible. As the rescued humans were brought aboard the fleet medical ships, Admiral Jang prepared her final message. "This engagement has been recorded in full detail," she announced. "Copies will be transmitted to every world in the galaxy so that everyone can see exactly what happens when someone violates Rule 1. The message was simple and clear. Humans were peaceful by choice, not because they were weak. And when that choice was taken away from them, the galaxy remembered very quickly why it was safer to leave Earth's ships alone. As the human fleet prepared to leave, one ship remained behind. It deployed a message buoy that would broadcast the battle recordings to any ship that passed through the system. The message was short. Rule 1 exists for a reason. Remember that reason. Chancellor Vextai, sitting in the ruins of his command, Bridge, finally understood. Humans weren't the galaxy's police force. They away. 1 month after the battle at Tau Ceti, the Galactic Council Station Omega 7 was busier than it had been in decades. Representatives from every major species had come to watch the recordings of what the news services were calling the 17-Minute War. Ambassador Sojin Park sat in the human section, watching delegates study the battle footage with expressions of awe and terror. The recordings showed everything in perfect detail. How quickly the human fleet had appeared, how completely they had dominated the engagement, and how precisely they had disabled the Kethmoran ships without killing anyone. "The energy readings can't be correct," said Councillor Velnash of the Rishan Collective. She was a tall, blue-skinned woman with large eyes that reflected her confusion. "No ship can generate that much power." "The readings are accurate," replied Councillor Dalvin from his seat in the Traxian section. The old purple alien looked tired, as if the events had aged him. "I've seen such power before." Admiral Hyunwoo Kim entered the hall and walked to the human section. Every eye followed him as he took his place next to Ambassador Park. He looked the same as always, calm, professional, slightly sad. Admiral Kim called Chancellor Killmoth, the new leader of the Keth-Moran Empire. He was much smaller than Vextai had been, with lighter green scales and nervous yellow eyes. The Council has questions about your fleet. Kim stood up slowly. I'm sure they do. How many ships does Earth really have? Asked the Rishan representative. Enough, Kim answered simply. That's not an answer, protested a delegate from the Miran Federation. Kim looked around the hall at all the faces staring at him. Some showed fear. Others showed anger. A few showed understanding. How many ships do you need? He asked. To make sure no one ever threatens innocent people again? The hall became very quiet. Ambassador Park stood up next to Kim. The Council called this session to discuss the Tau Ceti incident. We're here to answer your questions. My question, said Chancellor Killmoth, is why Earth maintains such powerful military forces while claiming to be peaceful. Park touched her data pad, and the air above the center of the hall lit up with star charts. They showed human space, small and compact compared to other empires. 47 human colonies, she said. 8 billion people, 50 star systems. We are not a large empire by galactic standards. Then why do you need such a powerful fleet? Asked the Rishan delegate. Because, Kim said, stepping forward, we learned something 300 years ago that we never want to forget. The display changed to show the galaxy during the Veltar War. Red areas marked where battles had been fought, where worlds had died. We learned that sometimes peaceful people have to do terrible things to protect innocent lives, Kim continued. And we decided that if we ever had to do terrible things again, we wanted to be very, very good at them. A young delegate from the Centauri Republics raised her hand. But Admiral, surely there are limits to what force can accomplish. Kim smiled sadly. There are no limits to what force can accomplish. That's the problem. I don't understand. With enough force, you can destroy anything. Anyone, any species, any civilization. Kim's voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. The question isn't whether you can do it. The question is whether you should. Park activated another display. This one showed Earth's defensive doctrine, the principles that governed when and how human military forces could be used. Earth's military exists for one purpose, she said, to make sure that what happened to the Veltar never happens again. But you destroyed the Veltar completely, protested the Centauri delegate. Yes, Kim said. We did. And we've spent 300 years making sure we never have to do anything like that again. Dalvin spoke up from his seat. Young ones, you don't understand. Before the humans stopped the Veltar, our galaxy was full of species that solved problems with genocide. The Veltar were just the strongest. What happened to the others? Asked Chancellor Killmoth. They learned to be more careful, Dalvin said. When they saw what humans did to the Veltar, they decided that maybe diplomacy was a better option after all. Kim nodded. We didn't just defeat one empire. We ended the age of casual genocide in our galaxy. Not because we wanted to rule, but because we proved that genocide has consequences. The Rishan delegate looked confused. But if you're so powerful, why don't you control the galaxy? Because we don't want to, Park said simply. We just want to live in peace. But we learned that sometimes the only way to have peace is to be so dangerous that no one wants to test you. A new voice spoke from the back of the hall. And what about justice? Everyone turned to see former Chancellor Vextai being escorted in by Council security. He had requested permission to address the Council from his detention cell. His scales were dull gray now, and his eyes held the look of someone who had seen too much. Vextai, Kim said quietly. How are you feeling? Like a fool, Vextai replied. I thought the old stories were myths. I thought humans were weak because your merchant ships were small and your diplomats were polite. And now? Now I understand that your merchant ships are small because you don't need them to be big. And your diplomats are polite because you can afford to be polite. Vextai looked around the hall at all the delegates watching him. I spent 3 days as a prisoner on human ships, he said. Do you know how they treated me? Like a guest. They fed me. They gave me medical care. They made sure I was comfortable. And? Asked the Centauri delegate. And I had just attacked their ships. I had violated the most important law in galactic history. I had threatened their people. Vextai's voice shook. And they still treated me with kindness. Kim stepped forward. Chancellor, you were wrong, but that didn't mean you deserved to die. But according to your own history, you destroyed entire species for less. The Veltar planned to commit genocide, Kim said. You were just making a mistake. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, Park said. The difference is intention. The Veltar wanted to kill innocent people. You just wanted to prove your strength. We can work with someone who makes mistakes. We can't work with someone who wants to commit murder. The hall was quiet for a long moment. Then the Centauri delegate spoke up again. What happens now? How do we prevent this from happening again? Kim and Park looked at each other. They had been discussing this question for weeks. The Galactic Accords will be rewritten, Park announced, with stronger protections and clearer guidelines. And enforcement? Asked Dalvin. A new galactic peacekeeping force, Kim said. Joint operations with ships from multiple species, but every fleet will include one human vessel. Why? Asked the Rishan delegate. Because, Kim said, humans have something most species don't have. We have weapons we hope never to use, against enemies we pray never to face. To protect peace, we'll die to preserve. Vextai spoke up again. And you'll really do it? You'll really destroy anyone who threatens innocent people? Kim looked at him for a long moment. Chancellor, I hope you never find out. The council session ended with unanimous agreement on the new accords. As delegates filed out, many of them were still watching the battle recordings on their personal devices. The footage was being broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring that every species would understand the lesson of Tau Ceti. Ambassador Park remained in her seat as the hall emptied. Admiral Kim sat down next to her. Do you think it will work? She asked. Will they really learn from this? Some will, Kim said. Others won't. There will always be someone who thinks they can test us. And when that happens? Kim looked at the empty council chamber, thinking about all the ships returning to their hidden bases, all the weapons being put back into storage, all the crews going back to their quiet lives. When that happens, he said, we'll remind them again. As many times as it takes. 6 months later, Captain Junho Lee stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Inchin's Honor. He had been promoted to admiral and given command of the 1st Galactic Peacekeeping Force fleet. The fleet was a mixture of ships from different species, but at its heart was Lee's human destroyer. It wasn't the biggest ship or the most advanced, but every alien crew member knew what it represented. Admiral, called his communications officer, we're receiving a distress call from the Rigel system. Pirates attacking a medical convoy. Lee looked at his tactical display. The convoy was carrying supplies to refugee camps, innocent people who needed help. Set course for Rigel, he ordered. Maximum speed. As the PC